to be able to look at that fund balance to maybe reduce some of our costs, but also hopefully so we don't have a tax increase. I mean, well, we had the tax increase this year. To increase it again is gonna be very difficult for a lot of folks in the city of Schenectady. So I think that the more we can do to try and keep things the best we can, and use, I'm not saying use all that fund balance, because that can kick you in the end. But to use some of it may be very applicable in this particular year. And you're looking at between 6 and 7 million fund balance? You got 3.5 now or 3
I
now?
think we'll have at least that. I
Yeah,
think when
so
we
I
look
would
at fund balance, we'll have, we had 3 appropriated and 6
That's
unappropriated.
That's correct.
So we went into we started this year with
Correct.
9 million, of which 3 million of it was used to reduce the
I'd
levy.
say,
So we'll have,
I'd be
we
tapping
believe we're
into
gonna have
some of
that.
that. I'd be tapping in, not all of it, but I would tap into some of that.
the rule of thumb with that, and it's just a rule, I mean, a thumb, it's not any sort of mandate or anything, is that you shouldn't use more than half.
Right.
I was just gonna say, because we're gonna have 2 tough years.
Why'd you-
Right, exactly.
So half now and half
And then what
later,
happens
and
after
that's it. It's
Use
about
fund
it.
balance, when we say maximize the use of fund balance?
Well, I wouldn't want to say maximize, because.
Well, no, like I said, if we use a rule of thumb of 50%.
Well, I'm not even sure 50%. It depends on what, there's several factors that you might look at when you're looking at your fund balance, but I think you can definitely tap it, but I wouldn't want to say what percentage when I don't have this whole picture in front of me. If I had the whole picture in front of me, then I might be able to say, look at 40%, because what you do is, if you use it all this year, then you got a major problem the year
Oh, no,
after
no, I
and the year
understand
after.
that
So
part, but-
I wouldn't want to say maximize or use 50%. I think what I would like them to do is seriously look at using some of that fund balance to offset so that we don't lose things we might not have to lose at this point.
Yeah,
Good point.
and not to
Very good point.
not to discredit.
So I wouldn't want to say maximize it.
Well, I didn't mean 100%, all I said, intelligently utilize.
Yes, that's a better way. I like that,
Yeah.
okay?
Intelligent use of.
Let's not hate
Yeah, right.
Two things I wanted to talk about. One of them is that the high school being on the danger list resulted in some extra monies coming into the district. Is that some of what's in this reserve fund, or where does that money go? And the second thing is, not to pick on you guys, but in terms of the administration, is there anything there that maybe some jobs could be consolidated?
Consulting job.
Well, the money for,
But that's not on our list.
the money for
We talked about
persistent
that last
endangerment,
week.
I don't think it's come in.
Yeah, that's a grant.
I don't know that we've gotten any of that
That's
money
a
for
grant.
persistent endangerment.
Do you-
If we did, if we did,
I was gonna
it's
mention
not
that.
hitting the numbers that you're looking
That
at.
would be a grant.
How much was it going to be?
We have a proposal into the Department of Labor for a $6 million grant.
6 million.
That, we were supposed to hear a while back, but we've been told that there were some other priorities in that department that have precluded them from finishing that grant process. So we haven't been denied it, but it hasn't been.
It hasn't come in at this point.
So that,
And the administrator, is there any consolidation there that could save any money?
Do you have any ideas or examples? Last year,
I don't know.
We don't need 2 assistant superintendents, we don't need like 3 of those.
Well, that's what we said, that's what we said last week.
Well, let me just, I don't, I mean, all right, Mr. Craig Brown, I love the guy, you know, he was real nice when I was here. We pay him $450 every time he steps foot through the door, but he's a consultant. Why? That's way too much money for a job that a principal could do. Rotate them. Let the principals or let the deans or whatever, you know, let the teachers, that doesn't matter, somebody else. Rotate them, we rotate their responsibilities to the staff we already have. You know, why are we bringing in other people and paying them huge, you know, amounts of money to do small little things? I'm sorry, but I mean, it just seems wasteful to me.
You don't have to apologize.
no, but before.
Just tell us what you think.
Before we go on, I just want to address the issue of the superintendent, because I remember being PTO president in Central Park and whining about the same exact thing. Why do we need all these assistant superintendents? And I understand your feeling, I really, because I remember complaining about the same thing, and, you know. which, you're talking about assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction, and which other superintendent?
Well, I was talking about the assistant superintendents, all right, and I think we have 2 of those? 3?
Yeah, because if you know what the different job
Yeah.
duties are,
Mhm.
you would see where
Well,
it fits
I mean,
better. And I just
personally,
wanna put that
I'm
out
not
there.
very, well, I don't know exactly what they do. I mean, like I said, I'm
That's
very-
my
I'm
point, so,
fairly new
so
to
that's
it,
what
but-
I'm saying, before we can clearly start saying we need to
No.
get rid of something, we have to have a brief discussion about the job duties
Yes.
before
Well,
we can
the
say.
one we did
Yeah.
talk about last
Yes.
week was the house principals to associate superintendent, to the assistant superintendent, to the superintendent.
Right.
That we're talking about the 4 layers
Right.
there. So,
So-
to his point, is
It seems
That
excessive,
change-
and like I said, I had the same feeling,
Yes,
till I saw the
Flatten the
things that had to be done, I went, whoa, we could do it a third, but I won't even get into that.
Well, every principal and teacher I talk to, they always tell me the same thing, like, these people are not needed. You know, I could do the job, and they say, like, back in the day, the principals used to rotate these responsibilities, and it was just
Yeah.
fine.
But I think what happens, Matt, in any organization that you have, you will find that same argument, that somebody else could do that, and maybe somebody doesn't do that. And sometimes it plays out where you really don't need, but the opposite sometimes comes in,
Yeah.
where you have to add, because, and I'll give you an example right in the room. Sal was given a new job, added to his description this year with
Because it's
respect to the Medicaid reimbursement, and several of us raised an issue right away. How much do you give to one person to keep adding before you take away, I'm gonna use your word, your efficiency?
Exactly.
So that's a struggle. But I mean, that got raised by several of us as soon as we heard he was headed for Medicaid. And, I mean, those are the things that you do look at, but I think you're gonna, the same argument comes in any organizational
I'm just saying,
structure.
all we do is evaluate it.
Because
You know,
for
sit down and look at it,
Yeah,
audit
you have
it.
to, that's correct.
If you, and again, we're not gonna hear to talk about anybody job
Yes,
duties
yeah,
and so on and
no.
so forth, but I just wanted to point, I made the same argument until I sat down and realized what the duties are.
Okay.
And I understand, in order to be, a school district of this size, over 10,000 students, and all the state mandates and so on that comes down. I mean, you know, we have all the state testing. If we don't have an assistant superintendent of instruction and curriculum, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And we cannot load the duties of the superintendent, the other superintendent onto that person. I mean, because there's supervisions of all the principals we have, they have to be supervised. You can't, the superintendent of instruction and curriculum, he has all the teachers and all the coordinators to do you know what I'm, it's
No,
a lot of people
Yeah.
to supervise. Every employee in the district, every last one, no matter from top down, has to be given an observation, at least 1 per year, and some need 3 per year. So can you imagine how many hours of just observation? You don't just observe someone and walk away. It has to be written up. Before you can observe a teacher, you have to do a pre-conference, then you have to do it after. So do you see that's why when you say, why do we need all the principals in that? Every last teacher has to be observed.
But you have to
Do you see what
realize
I'm saying?
also that the public looks at this and they say, look, you got a bunch of paper pushers, and they're pushing, and this one's
It's
pushing
state
paper.
mandate.
And you know what? I've worked for the state, and I've seen state mandates, and I know that a lot of times, they put a mandate on without considering what it's gonna cost somebody. And the other thing that I want to point out very cynically is sometimes the school district or whatever group gets the state mandate doesn't push back because, oh, we'll have another administrator, which means somebody else can get a promotion, and the state pays for most of it the first year, maybe the second year, and then it kind of cuts down. So they don't push back against state mandates because in some ways it's for their benefit. However, the taxpayers now end up paying for yet another body. What happens if you push back and you say, you know what, some of these state mandates we're simply not going to do?
You say we're not gonna be your
You're not gonna do the state mandate?
Yeah, well, it depends, you gotta pick and choose your.
Right. I mean, so you're not gonna do, the core functions, you're not gonna, you say, fine, those things we have to do. Some of the others, let's say we take every third mandate that has to do with merely measuring and testing and, ad infinitum, because we're just teaching our kids from, and I've heard this from my kids, from other kids, it seems like we're testing, we're teaching for the testing,
Yes.
and what do we